Hey guys, it's Samir from MMOs.com, and I'm doing a quick weekly news recap of all major MMO news and announcements for the week ending February 20th, 2017. This is episode number 83 of the recap, and the first bit of news this week comes from Square Enix regarding Final Fantasy XIV. FanFest EU just wrapped up on Sunday, and they announced a whole lot of stuff about the game's upcoming expansion, Stormblood. Most notably, the Samurai Job was announced, which is a melee DPS class, and the second new class announced for the expansion alongside Red Mage. The city of Kugane was also revealed, which will serve as the main city/story hub for the expansion. And lastly, a brand new Eastern-style residential district called Shirogane was also announced, which should help alleviate this serious lack of housing plots on the busier servers. There's a lot of other smaller announcements like doubled furnishing capacity for homes, a new beast tribe, a new primal, and a bunch of other small goodies. It's all very exciting stuff, and the expansion is still set to launch on June 20th, 2017. And remember, these changes are just the new stuff that just came out this last week. We still have all the news from before, like the increased level cap to 70, and a bunch of other goodies, so it's set to be a big expansion, so I'll be checking it out myself, and you guys can too. Next, a bit of interesting news from Fnatic Games, the company behind Closers. So a few days after the English private server for Closers called Code Closers launched in the West in English, Fnatic Games, the company that actually develops the game officially, revealed to us that they're actually working with a North American publisher to launch the game in the West. So Closers will be coming to the West. You can already play it right now on the private server, but if you want to play on the official server, you will have the opportunity to do so eventually. I suspect they're working to bring the game to the West just now because the private server launched, so I guess to combat that, they're rushing to put out their own server now. And the timing is definitely related to the private server, because this game has been out for already a couple of years in South Korea, but it's finally making its way to the West officially. Next up, a bit of news about Crowfall. Pre-Alpha 4.0 just launched this last weekend, and introduced with it the game's faction system. Players choose between one of three factions, Chaos, Balance, and Order, and fight for them throughout the duration of the campaign, with no switching allowed till the end of the campaign. New Templar archetype is also available to play now, and is a two-handed sword-wielding warrior. Crowfall is probably going to be the first big crowdfunded MMORPG to launch, as they expect to launch sometime this year. It's a Western-developed game, and there's an incredible amount of hype behind it. I personally stayed away from the alpha so I can play the game as it was intended when it launched, so I'm actually really looking forward to trying this one out. Based on what I've seen about the game though, I think it has a lot of potential. They're actually doing a lot of things different. It's not just another MMORPG grinder. They're mixing the formula up a lot, and we'll see when it comes out. Next, a bit of news for Devilian. Yes, the game is still around and chugging along. Trion Worlds released a Valentine's Day update for the game, which added a new dungeon called the Terror of Totemies, and a new raid called Forbidden Sanctuary. Devilian has fallen off quite a bit on Steam since its launch, as it currently averages about 92 players online at any given time. In comparison to before, when it first launched, it got about 3,000. But again, that's just on Steam. That doesn't count the players currently playing the game on Trion's own launcher, Glyph, so I'm sure it's doing better than just the Steam numbers indicate, because they are still updating the game. I'm also curious if Mu Legend will impact Devilian's numbers, because they are similar kinds of games, and Mu Legend was a lot of fun. Moving right along, a bit of news from MMOs.com, and not about Revelation Online for a change, but rather Skyforge. The game is set to launch on PlayStation 4 this spring, alongside MMORPGs like DC Universe Online and Neverwinter. One major change coming to the console version will be the enhanced PS4 action combat, which I'm not entirely sure what it means, but it probably just means it was redesigned a bit to feel nicer on the controller. Don't expect any cross-platform compatibility, as console ports of MMOs almost never have it. I think Final Fantasy XI and XIV were the only games that did. I think we'll continue seeing more and more of these free-to-play games launching on consoles, especially since Neverwinter has been doing so well on there. So expect more MMORPGs on console in the future. And speaking of Neverwinter, that's actually our next topic of discussion. Despite the game's modest success in the West, it's not faring so well in China, as it's scheduled to shut down on May 19th, 2017 for good. This won't affect the Western version of the game at all, but it does help us understand what works in America doesn't always work in China, and vice versa. I mean, a lot of newer games Perfect World launched in China, like Mount Shu Chronicles, haven't even been ported to the West. So it looks like Perfect World is changing strategies quite a bit, and they're focusing on local partnerships with studios in the West like Motiga that works on Gigantic, instead of just releasing their own games here. Up next, a bit of news for Bless. More specifically, Bless Korea. There's still no news on an American version or American release just yet. All we know is Area's still working on it, apparently. But the Korean version of the game isn't doing too hot, because they've already done several server mergers. There's only 2 live servers still remaining, and right now Bless is trying to get more players into the game by giving new players free level 45 equipment, and anyone who has level 45 character a free boost to level 50. The event itself is titled The Up Project, and they're just trying to get more people into the game, and they've been giving people rewards for referring friends into the game. So the Korean version isn't doing too great, unfortunately, which I don't know what that means for the American version just yet. I don't think they're going to give up on the Western release, because they spent a lot of money on Bless. We revealed in our Friday Grindfest video that they spent over $60 million developing Bless, making it one of the most expensive Korean MMORPGs to ever be developed. And given that I still think we'll get a Western release, I've been having fun with the game, so it's unfortunate to see it's not doing so hot in Korea. Up next, a small bit of news for Mu Legend. WebZen is teasing the game's closed beta 2 with a very short trailer which you're seeing in the background that mixes up CGI and in-game gameplay. Most notably, I do want to reiterate that the game's closed beta 2 begins on February 21st. And there will still be a wipe. You will also need a key to participate, but if you don't have a key for it, just head on over to MMOs.com/giveaway and you can get a key from us. We have a whole bunch to give away, so get them over there. We had a lot of fun with the first round of closed beta testing. I may check out the second round, but I actually really want to wait for open beta because I hate getting my character wiped. Up next, a bit of industry news. John Smedley joins Amazon Game Studios in opening a brand new studio in San Diego to develop new games for Amazon Game Studios. This all comes shortly after Hero Song shut down, which is the game he was working on and his previous company that he founded called Pixel Mage Games. So that shut down, and now he's working with Amazon Game Studios. There's maybe speculation that Amazon's Necromancers could bring back Hero Song, but nothing on that just yet. People are also speculating that the game was canceled just a month after early access because he was potentially getting hired by Amazon to work on something else, but those are all just rumors. All we know is John Smedley is working with Amazon Game Studios, and we'll have to wait and see what comes of it. Up next, bit of news came out for SNK's King of Fighters World, their mobile MMORPG based on the King of Fighters franchise. Based on what they revealed, it doesn't really feel like an MMORPG. The game will have a persistent city where players can walk around and talk with each other, and then they can go right into arenas where they can do 3v3 fights and other game modes. But it does seem like it's going to be a bit more like Rumble Fighter, Lost Saga, or any of those other kind of brawling games. But there will, I guess, be some persistent RPG elements, which is why I guess they're calling it a mobile MMORPG. It's set to launch in China in the summer of 2017, which is coming up, and globally after that, so it will be coming to America probably sometime this year. They also did reveal some in-game graphics through a series of GIFs, which they released, and you can see those on MMOs.com, and you can just see the CGI trailer in the background otherwise. Up next, a bit of news for another mobile game. God Eater Online has gone live on Android in Japan and will be launching on iOS later as well. It's only available in Japan right now, but it actually looks pretty decent, and you can still play it on QAP from the West. Expect a first look for this one relatively soon, but it looks like a pretty cool Monster Hunter-esque MMO, and it does have these persistent fields, but there are also instance elements to the game as well. But the fact that it has persistent elements is pretty awesome. Moving right along, the Exile Steam launch is set to begin on February 23rd, and the company behind the game, Fairy Tale Distillery, revealed the game's Founders Packs, which cost anywhere from $20 up to $80. But remember, even though the game is going to be buy-to-play, you can actually play the game for free for 7 days, which I think is the best model for buy-to-play games. Give players unrestricted access to the game. I know BDO did this as well, but yeah, it's a buy-to-play game, but you can play it for free for 7 days and decide if you want to play it or not. It's a top-down PvP sandbox MMO with full loot and player-run clans, so it looks to be inspired by classics like Ultima Online. Next up, a bit of news for an oldie. Tibia is getting BattlEye integration 20 years after its release. BattlEye will integrate with the game on March 21st. And if you don't know what BattlEye is, it's an anti-cheat software, which is used on a lot of shooting games and survival games. If you don't know, Tibia is still an incredibly popular game. It gets over 10,000 concurrent users at almost any time, which is absolutely incredible for a 20-year-old game. If it were on Steam, it would be the second most played MMORPG on Steam after Path of Exile. So yeah, go Tibia. Up next, a bit of cool news from Valve regarding anti-cheat software. Valve was working to replace their anti-cheat software with a machine learning algorithm that can actually ban cheaters and learn how cheaters work without actually programming in parameters, parsing, and whatnot. Because the way current anti-cheat seems to work is that Valve designs parameters to detect cheating, and the developers of the hacks simply tweak their hacks so it goes around those parameters or does it slightly differently. It's all still in the works, but if it does work, it will kind of revolutionize online gaming to stop cheaters, not just for Valve's games, potentially for every game if it's replaced with machine learning algorithms and machines rather than humans trying to ban the cheaters, because you can never manually ban everybody. Next up, a massive new expansion for Path of Exile was announced this last week called Fall of Riot, which will add 6 new acts to the game, taking the game from 4x all the way up to 10, which more than doubles the game's main content. An emphasis on single playthrough is the new focus of the game, so the whole multi-difficulty system is being removed and is being replaced by these 6 new acts. It's an overall much more intuitive system of progression and adds a ton of new content for the game. There's a boatload of other content included in the Fall of Riot update, which is set to fully launch sometime this summer. Another bit of news is that Path of Exile is coming to Xbox One later this year. This is overall one of the biggest content updates I've ever seen in a single expansion, especially for a free-to-play game and probably for a subscription game as well. I mean, all the main story stuff is literally being doubled. It's absolutely nuts. Good job, Grinding Gear Games. The next and last bit of news this week is an oddball. Secondhand Lands is trying to make a comeback on Steam. It's joining the many older games that relaunched on Steam to try and make a comeback. This is an oddball fairy tale themed MMORPG where players can play as animals and a bunch of other interesting creatures. And it launched back in 2009 alongside Ashen Empires, but it later shut down in 2012 due to having a minuscule player base. This was a very oddball game, and it never really had a big player base, and they're hoping that on Steam it will do better. And it's launching almost 4 years after it shut down initially. According to the game's Steam Greenlight page, it features hundreds of quests, server-wide events, and so many pointless ways for you to die, which is an interesting feature to list. But anyway guys, that's it for MMO News this week. I'll see you guys tomorrow for the podcast. Later guys.